everybody. Today, Hani is going to read Matilda by Royal Dahl and illustrated by Quentin Blake. The Platinum Blonde Man. There was no doubt that Matilda's mind that this late display of foulness by her father deserved several punishment as she sat eating her awful fried fish and fried chips and ignoring the television. Her brain went to work on various possibilities. By the time she went up to her bed, her mind was made up. The next morning, she got up early and went into the bathroom and locked the door. As we already know, Mr. Wormwood's hair was dyed a brilliant platinum blonde, very much the same glistening silver color as a female tightrope walker's tights in a circus. The big dyeing job was done twice a year at the hairdresser's, but every month or so in between, Mrs. Wormwood used freshening by giving it a rinse in the wash basin with something called platinum blonde hair dye extra strong. This also deserved to dye the nasty brown hairs that kept growing from the roots underneath. The bottle of platinum blonde hair dye extra strong was kept in the cupboard in the bathroom, and underneath the title on the label were written the words, "Caution, this is parricide. Keep away from children." Matilda has read it many times with fascination. Matilda's father had a fine crop of black hair which he parted in the middle and which is exactly proud. "Good strong hair," he was fond of saying, "means there is a good strong brain underneath." "Like Shakespeare," Matilda had once said to him. "Like who?" "Shakespeare, Daddy." "Was he brainy?" "Very, Daddy." "Did he have masses of hair, did he?" "He was bald, Daddy." To which the father had snapped, "If you can't talk sense, then shut up." Anyway, Mr. Wormwood kept his hair looking bright and strong, so he thought, by rubbing it every morning with large quantities of lotion called oil of violet hair tonic. A bottle of this smelly purple mixture always stood on the shelf above the sink in the bathroom alongside all the toothbrushes, and a very vigorous scalp massage with oil of violet took place daily after shaving was completed. This hair and scalp massage was always accompanied by loud, muscular grunts and heavy breathing and gasps of, "Oh, that's better. That's the stuff. Rub it right into the boots," which could be clearly heard by Matilda in her bedroom across the corridor. Now, in the early morning privacy of the bathroom, Matilda unscrewed the cap of her father's oil of violet and tipped 3/4 of the contents down the drain. Then she filled the bottle up with her mother's platinum blonde hair dye extra strong. She carefully left enough of her father's original hair tonic in the bottle so that when she gave it a good shake, the whole thing still looked reasonably purple. Then she replaced the bottle on the shelf above the sink, taking care to put her mother's bottle back into the cupboard. So far, so good. At breakfast time, Matilda sat quietly in the dining room eating her cornflakes. Her father sat opposite her with his black back at the door, devouring hunks of bread smothered by the mixture of peanut butter and strawberry jam. The mother was just out of the sight around the corner on the kitchen making Mr. Wormwood's breakfast, which always had to be 2 fried eggs, some fried bread, and 3 pork sausages, and 3 strips of bacon, and some fried tomatoes. At this point, Mr. Wormwood came noisily into the room. He was incapable of entering any room quietly, especially at breakfast time. He always tried to make his appearance felt immediately by creating a lot of noise and clatter. One could almost hear him saying, "It's me, here I come, the great man himself, the master of the house, the wage earner, the one who makes it possible for the all rest of you to live so well. Nurse me and pay your respect." On this occasion, he strode in and slapped his son on the back and shouted, "Well, my boy, your father feels he's on another great money-making day today in the garage. I've got a few little beauties I'm going to flog on the idiots this morning. Where is my breakfast?" "It's coming, treasure," Mrs. Wormwood called from the kitchen. Matilda kept her face bent low over her cornflakes. She didn't dare look up. In the first place, she wasn't all sure that she was going to see. Secondly, if she saw what she was going to see, she wouldn't trust herself to keep a straight face. The son was looking directly ahead in the window, stuffing himself with bread and peanut butter and strawberry jam. The father was just moving around to sit at the table when her mother came sweeping out from the kitchen carrying a huge plate piled high with egg and sausages and bacon and tomatoes. She looked up and caught sight of her husband. She stopped dead. She let out a scream and seemed to lift her right up into the air, and she dropped the plate with crash and a splash on the floor. Everyone jumped, including Mr. Wormwood. "What the heck is the matter with you, woman?" he shouted. "Look at the mess you've made on the carpet." "Your hair!" the mother was shrieking, pointing a quivering finger at her husband. "Look at your hair! What you've done to your hair!" "What's wrong with my hair, for heaven's sake?" he said. "Oh my God, Dad, what you have done to your hair!" the son shouted. A splendid noisy skin was building up nicely into the breakfast room. Matilda said nothing. She simply sat there admiring the wonderful effect of her own handiwork. Mr. Wormwood's fine crop of the black hair was now a dirty silver, the color this time a size-stroke worker's touch that was not being washed for the entire circus season. You've dyed it!" shrieked the mother. "Why did you do it, you fool? It looks absolutely frightful. It looks horrendous. You look like a freak. What the blazes are you all talking about?" the father yelled, putting both hands to his hair. "I most certainly have not dyed it. What do you mean I've dyed it? What's happened to it? Or is this some sort of a stupid joke?" His face was turning pale green, the color of sour apples. "You must have dyed it, Dad," the son said. "It's the same color as Mom's, only much dirtier looking." "Of course he's dyed it," the mother said. "It can't change color all by itself. What on earth are you trying to do? Make yourself look handsome or something? You've like someone's grandmother gone wrong." "Give me your mirror," the father yelled. Don't just stand there shrieking at me. Get me your mirror." The mother's handbag lay on the chair on the other end of the table. She opened the bag and got a powder compact that had a small round mirror on the inside of the lid. She opened the compact and handed it to her husband. He grabbed it and held it before his face, and doing so most of the powder all over the front of his fancy tweed jacket. "Be careful!" shrieked the mother. "Now look what you've done. That's my best Elizabeth Arden face powder." "Oh my God!" yelled the father, staring into a little mirror. "What happened to me? I look terrible. I look just like you gone wrong. I can't go down the garage and sell cars like this. How did it happen?" He stared around the room, first at the mother, then at the son, then at Matilda. "How could it happen?" he yelled. "I imagine, Daddy," Matilda said quietly, "that you weren't looking very hurt, and you simply took Mommy's bottle of hair stuff on the shelf instead of your own." "Of course," that's what happened, the mother cried. Well, really, Harry, how stupid can you get? Why didn't you read the label before you started splashing the stuff all over you? Mine's terribly strong. I'm only meant to use 1 tablespoon of it on the whole basin of water, and you've done it and put it over your hair knit. It'd probably take all your hair off in the end. Is your scalp beginning to burn, my dear? You mean I'm going to lose all my hair? The husband yelled. I think you will, the mother said. Peroxide is a very powerful chemical. That's what they put down the lavatory to disinfect with the pan. Only they give it another name. What are you saying? The husband cried. I'm not a lavatory pan. I don't want to be disinfected. Even jolted like I use it, the mother told him. It makes a good deal of my hair fall out, so goodness knows what's going to happen to you. I'm surprised it didn't take the whole of top of your head off. What shall I do? Well, the father, tell me quick. What to do before it starts falling out? Matilda said, I'd give it a good wash, Dad, if I were you, with soap and water. But you'll have to hurry. Will that change the color back? The father asked anxiously. Of course it wouldn't, you twit, the mother said. Then what do? I can't go around looking like this forever. You'll have to dye it black, the mother said. But wash it first, or there won't be any there to dye. Right, the father shouted, springing into action. Get me an appointment and your hairdresser if it's set for hair dyeing job. Tell them it's an emergency. They've got to put someone else off their list. I'm going upstairs to wash it now. With that, the man dashed out of the room, and Mrs. Wormwood, sighing deeply, went to the telephone to call the beauty parlor. He does do some pretty silly things now and again, doesn't he, Mommy? Matilda said. The mother, dialing the number on the phone, said, I'm afraid men are not always quite as clever as they think they are. You will learn when you get a bit older, my girl. Miss Honey. Matilda was a little late in starting school. Most children begin primary school at 5 or even just before. But Matilda's parents, who wasn't very concerned one way or the other about their daughter's education, had forgotten to make a proper arrangement in advance. She was 5 and a half when she entered school for the first time. The village school for younger children was a bleak brick building called Cruncham Hall Primary School. It had about 250 pupils, aged 5 to just under 12 years old. The head teacher, the boss, the supreme commander of this establishment, was a formidable middle-aged lady whose name was Miss Trunchbull. Naturally, Matilda was put in the bottom class, about the same age of her, where there are 18 other small boys and girls about the same age of her. Their teacher was called Miss Hani, and she could not have been more than 23 or 24. She had a lovely pale over Madonna face with blue eyes, and her hair was light brown. Her body was so slim and fragile, one got the feeling that if she fell over, she would smash into 1,000 pieces, like a Peruvian figure. Miss Jennifer Honey was a mild and quiet person who never raised her voice and was seldom seen to smile, but there was no doubt that she possessed the rare gift for being adored by every small child under her care. She seemed to understand totally the bewilderment and the fear so often overwhelm young children who for the first time in their lives are hurried into the classroom and told to obey orders. Some curious warmth that the almost tangible shone out of Miss Honey's face when she spoke to a confused and homesick newcomer to the class. Miss Trunchbull, the head mistress, was something else altogether. She was gigantic holy terror, a fierce and tyrannical monster who frightened the life out of pupils and teachers alike. There was an aura of menace about her even at a distance, and when she came close to you, you almost feel the dangerous heat radiating from her as a red-hot rod of battle. When she marched, Miss Trunchbull never walked. She always marched like a warm trooper with long strides and arms swinging. And when she marched along the corridor, you could actually hear the snoring as she went. And if a group of children happened to be in her path, she plowed right through them like a tank, with small people bouncing off her to left and right. Thank goodness we don't meet any people like her in this world, although they do exist, and all of us are likely to come across at least one of them in lifetime. If you ever do, you should behave as you would meet an enraged rhinoceros out of the bush. Climb up the nearest tree and stay there until it has gone away. This woman, in her accessories and in her appearance, is almost impossible to describe, but I shall make some attempt to do in a little later on. Let's leave for the moment and go back to Matilda and the first day in Miss Honey's class. After the usual business of going through all the names of the children, Miss Honey handed out brand new exercise books to each pupil. "You have all brought your own pencils, I hope," she said. "Yes, Miss Honey," they chanted. "Good. Now this is the very first day of school for each one of you. It is the beginning of at least 11 long years of schooling that all of you are going to have go through. And 6 of those years will be spent right here at the Crunchum Hall, where, as you know, your headmistress is Miss Trunchbull. Let me, for your own good, tell you something about Miss Trunchbull. She insists upon strict discipline throughout the school, and if you take my advice, you will go to your very best to behave yourselves in her presence. Never argue with her. Never answer her back. Always do as she says. If you get in the wrong side of Miss Trunchbull, she can liquidize you like a carrot in the kitchen blender. It's nothing to laugh about, Lavender. Take the grin off your face. All of you will be wise to remember that Miss Trunchbull deals very, very severely with anyone who gets off the line in the school." "Have you got the message?" "Yes, Miss Honey," chirruped 19 eager little voices. "I myself," Miss Honey went on, "want to have you learn as much as possible while you're in the class. That is because I know it will make some things easier for you later on. For example, by the end of this week, I shall set every one of you to know the 2 times table by heart. And in a year's time, I hope you know all the multiplication tables up to 12. It will help you enormously if you do. Now then, do any of you happen to have learned 2 times table already?" Matilda put up her hand. She was the only one. Miss Honey looked carefully at the tiny girl with dark hair and a round, serious face sitting in the second row. "Wonderful," she said. "Please stand up and recite as much of it as you can." Matilda stood and began to say 2 times table. When she got to twice 12 is 24, and she didn't stop. She went right on to twice 13 is 26, twice 14 is 28, twice 15 is 30, twice 16 is... "Stop!" Miss Honey said. She had been listening slightly sound-bowed to the smooth recital, and now she said, "How far can you go?" "How far?" Matilda said. "Well, I didn't really know, Miss Honey. For quite a long way, I think." Miss Honey took a few moments to let this curious statement sink in. "You mean," she said, "you could tell me what 2 times 28 is?" "Yes, Miss Honey." "What is it?" 56, Miss Honey." "What about something much harder, like 2 times 487? Could you tell me that? I think so, yes, Matilda said. Are you sure? Why, yes, Miss Honey, I'm fairly sure. What is it then? 2 times 487. 974, Matilda said immediately. She stopped quietly and politely and without any sign of showing off. Miss Honey gazed at Matilda with absolute amazement, but when she spoke she kept her voice level. That is really splendid, she said. But, of course, multiplying by 2 is a lot easier than some of the bigger numbers. Do you know the other multiplication tables? Do you know any of those? I think so, Miss Honey. I think so. Which ones, Matilda? How far have you got? I don't quite know, Matilda said. I don't know what you mean. What I mean is you, for instance, know the 3 times table? Yes, Miss Honey. And the 4 times? Yes, Miss Honey. Well, how many do you know, Matilda? Do you know all the way up to 12 times table? Yes, Miss Honey. What are 12 sevens? 84, Matilda said. Miss Honey paused and leaned back on a chair behind the plain table that stood in the middle of the floor in the front of the class. She was considerably shaken by the exchange, but took care not to show it. She had never come across a 5-year-old before, or indeed a 10-year-old who could multiply with such facility. I hope the rest of you are listening to this, she said to the class. Matilda is a very lucky girl. She had wonderful parents who would have already taught her to multiply lots of numbers. Wasn't your mother, Matilda, who taught you? No, Miss Honey, it wasn't. You must have a great father then. He must be a brilliant teacher. No, Miss Honey, Matilda said quietly. My father did not teach me. You mean you taught yourself? I don't quite know, Matilda said truthfully. It's just I don't find it very difficult to multiply one number by another. Miss Honey took a deep breath and let it out slowly. She looked again at the small girl with bright eyes standing beside her desk, so sensible and solemn. You say you don't find it difficult to multiply one number by another, Miss Honey said. Could you try to explain that a little bit? Oh dear, Matilda said. I'm not really sure. Miss Honey waited. The class went silent, all listening. For instance, Miss Honey said, if I ask you to multiply by 14 and 19, no, that's too difficult. It's 266, Matilda said softly. Miss Honey stared at her. Then she picked up a pencil and quickly worked on the sum on the piece of paper. What did you say it was? She said, looking up. 266. Miss Honey put down her pencil and removed the spectacles began to polish the lenses with a piece of tissue. The class remained quiet, watching her and waiting for what was coming next. Matilda was still standing up beside her desk. Now tell me, Matilda, Miss Honey said, still polishing. Try to tell me exactly what goes on inside your head when you get a multiplication like that to do. You obviously have to work it out in some way, but you seem to able to arrive at the answer almost instantly. Take the one you've just done, 14 multiplied by 19. I simply put the 14 down in my head and multiply it by 19, Matilda said. I'm afraid I don't know how else to explain it. I've always said to myself, what if a little pocket calculator can do it? Why shouldn't I? Why not, indeed, Miss Honey said. The human brain is an amazing thing. I think it's a lot better than a lump of metal, Matilda said. That is the old calculator it. How right you are, Miss Honey said. Pocket calculators are not allowed in this school anyway. Miss Honey was feeling quite quivery. There was no doubt in her mind that she had met a truly extraordinary medical brain. The words like child genius, the prodigy went through her head. She knew that this sort of wonders could pop in the world from time to time, but only once or twice in 100 years. After all, Mozart was only 5 when he started composing for the piano, and look what happened to him. It's not fair, Lavender said. How can she do it and we can't? Don't worry, Lavender. We'll soon catch up, Miss Honey said, lying through her teeth. At this point, Miss Honey could not resist the temptation of exploring this still further the mind of this astonishing child. She knew that she was out to be paying attention to the rest of the class, but she was altogether too excited to let the matter rest. Well, she said, pretending to address the whole class, let us leave sums for the moment and see if any of you have begun to learn to spell. Hands up anyone who can spell hat. 3 hands went up. They belonged to Lavender, a small boy called Nigel, and to Matilda. Spell cat, Nigel. Nigel spelled it. Miss Honey now decided to ask a question that normally she would not have dreamed of asking the class on the first day. I wonder, she said, whether any of you 3 who know how to spell cat and learned how to read a whole group of words when they are strung together in a sentence. I have, Nigel said. So have I, Lavender said. Miss Honey went to the blackboard and wrote with her white chalk with the sentence, I already begun to learn how to read long sentences. She had purposely made it difficult, and she knew there was precious few 5-year-olds around who would be able to manage it. Can you tell me what it says, Nigel? She asked. It's too hard, Nigel said. Lavender, the first word is I, Lavender said. Can any of you read the whole sentence? Miss Honey asked, waiting for the yes that felt certain was going to come from Matilda. Yes, Matilda said. Go ahead, Miss Honey said. Matilda read the sentence without any hesitation at all. That really is very good indeed, Miss Honey said, making the understatement of her life. How much can you read, Matilda? I think I can read most things, Miss Honey, Matilda said, although I'm afraid I couldn't understand the meanings. Miss Honey got to her feet and walked smartly out of the room, but was back in 30 seconds carrying a thick book. She opened it at random and placed it on Matilda's desk. This is a book called Book of Humorous Poetry, she said. See if you can read that one loud. Smoothly, without pause and a nice speed, Matilda began to read. An epicure dining at Crewe found a rather large mug in his stew, cried the waiter. Don't shout and wait with about, or the rest will be wanting one too. Several children saw the funny side of the rhyme and laughed. Miss Honey said, Do you know that is the epicure is, Matilda? It is someone who is dainty with his eating, Matilda said. That is correct, Miss Honey said. And do you happen to know what the particular type of poetry is called? It's called limerick, Matilda said. It's a lovely one. It's so funny. It's a famous one, Miss Honey said, picking up the book and returning to her table in front of the class. A really limerick is very hard to write, she added. They look easy, but they most certainly are not. I knew, Matilda said. I've tried quite a few times, but mine are never any good. You have you? Matilda said. Miss Honey said, more startled than ever. Well, Matilda, I would very much like to hear one of these limericks you say you have written. Could you try to remember one for us? Well, Matilda said, hesitating, I've actually been trying to make up one about you, Miss Honey, while I've been sitting here. About me? Miss Honey said. Well, I've certainly got to hear that one, haven't we? I don't think I want to say, Miss Honey. Please tell him, Miss Honey said. I promise I won't mind. I think you will, Miss Honey, because I have to use your first name to make things rhyme, and that's why I don't want to say it. How do you know my first name? Miss Honey asked. I heard another teacher calling you it just before we came in," Matilda said. "She called you Jenny." "I insist upon hearing this limerick," Miss Honey said, smiling one of her rare smiles. "Stand up and recite it." Instinctively, Matilda stood up very slowly, very nervously. She recited her limerick. "The thing we'll all ask about Jenny is, surely there cannot be many young girls in the place with so lovely a face. The answer to that is, not any." The whole of Miss Honey's pale and pleasant face blushed a brilliant scarlet. Then once again she smiled. It was a much broader one this time, smile of pure pleasure. "Why, thank you, Matilda," she said, still smiling. "Although it is not true, it is very good limerick. Oh dear, I must try to remember that one." From the third row of desk, Lavender said, "It's good, I like it." "It's true as well," a small boy called Rupert said. "Of course it's true," Nigel said. Already the whole class had begun to run toward Miss Honey, although as she had not heard me taking any notice of any of them except Matilda. "Who taught you to read, Matilda?" Miss Honey asked. "I just sort of taught myself, Miss Honey." "You have read any books all by yourself? Any children's books, I mean?" "I've read all the ones at the public library in the High Street, Miss Honey." "Did you like them?" "I liked some of them very much indeed," Matilda said, "but thought others were fairly dull." "Tell me one you liked." "I liked The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe," Matilda said. "I liked Mrs. C.S. Lewis is a very good writer, but he has one failing. There was no funny bits in his books." "You're right there," Miss Honey said. "There isn't any funny bits in Mr. Tolkien either," Matilda said. "Do you think that all children's books ought to have funny bits in them?" Miss Honey said. "I do," Matilda said. "Children are not so serious as grown-ups, and they love to laugh." Miss Honey was astounded by the wisdom of this tiny girl. She said, "And what are you going to do when you read all the children's books?" "I'm reading other books," Matilda said. "I'm borrowing them from the library. Mrs. Fox is very kind to me. She helps me choose them." Miss Honey was leaning forward from over her book table and gazing in wonder at the child. She had completely forgotten how about the rest of the class. "What other books?" she murmured. "I'm very fond of Charles Dickens," Matilda said. "He makes us laugh a lot, especially Mr. Pickwick." At the moment the bell of the corridor sounded for the end of